Today the CPM, which took such great stance saying, no, we are for this and that and gender and whatever. Today saying, we support the Hindu groups and we support the community and we support tradition. Why? Because they want votes. So belief is not the problem. The problem is whenever it goes into a point of coercion.
So are you a free speech absolutist yourself?
No one can be a free speech absolutist. This is the myth. The same people who will argue vehemently about Sabarimala will not say a single word about what happened in Sandesh Khali, for instance, and the brutal gang rape of women and many other terrible heinous things that happened there, or the RG Kaur case, for instance, in Calcutta. We are breaking away fundamentally. My only question is action rather than belief is the filter. Is it demonstrated that the person concerned is using these, whatever their belief system, into the work that they do? I mean, the crowd may have moved away from Khan Market. They may be not sitting in Khan Market anymore, but the problem exists.
Yeah, now it's an amalgamation Khan Market for sure of various people. So yes, definitely not there anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this, Dr. Sengupta. It is a pleasure.
Okay.
I will dive straight into one singular question also because this is a conversation that's been going on in the courts regarding Sabarimala, but that is the second fold of my question.
Sure.
About faith and society. You've spoken about how it becomes a political issue when faith and society interact with each other.
Yeah. Because remember, if your faith is just individual, it doesn't matter. I mean, I can do what I want in my house, right? But any notion of faith, when it interacts with society, avoiding the political is impossible because anything social has a political aspect to it. So that's the very simple, succinct argument.
So any thoughts on when that happens, how the differentiation moves from personal to constitutional? Do you think there should be a red line there? I'm asking because it's an important conversation to have, considering now so much of it is discussed in the courtrooms and legal news is now national news in a way.
Well, there's a very simple way to look at it. Number one, we have and we should question how much of the frameworks that we are using to understand this problem, especially which interlinks with issues of faith, is taken from colonial structures. A colonial understanding of what faith is, what certain aspects of faith are, that entire thing has to be dismantled. Number two, I would say that, look, I mean, you're probably asking from the point of, when you say constitution, you're probably talking from a legal point of view. Well, the law intervenes not when there is a belief. The law intervenes when there is coercion. So you can believe anything you want. I can believe anything I want. But if I use any measure of coercion which disturbs somebody else, whether it's coercion trying to get people to on the side of a belief, or it's coercion in using public goods and services, or insisting that certain public goods and services are first to be given to certain groups and then to others, and so on and so forth. There's a hierarchy. All of this falls under the broad banner of coercion. Whenever there is coercion, the law has the right to intervene. As far as it's just a belief, anybody can believe anything. I cannot get inside your head and change what you believe. And nor can you mine, right? So belief is not the problem, in my humble opinion. The problem is whenever it goes into a point of coercion. If there is coercion, then the law intervenes. But having said that, we must, again, especially because you spoke about faith, we must have a rigorous conversation about how much of what we understand in terms of faith in our country comes from an old and very resilient colonial indoctrination, which has taught us as Indians to look at ourselves, to look at our own society, our own beliefs, our own traditions in a particular way, in a particular lens. This is a particular sociological process. It will not happen in one day. I believe the process has started. We have started to decolonize. We have started to leave aside many of the frameworks of the past, frameworks that were given to us in a sense by a colonial worldview. But this will take time. And I think, as India rises, it becomes more prosperous. Perhaps in the next 20, 30 years, we'll finally come to a point where, K.C. Bhattacharya, the great philosopher, in 1928 in a speech, and I think it got published as an essay in 1931, wrote about Swaraj in ideas. We have Swaraj in India today. We are yet to attain complete Swaraj in ideas. And the question that you're raising is connected to this Swaraj in ideas. When we begin to understand our own country, our own culture, our own belief systems in a truly decolonized, non-colonized, Swaraj in ideas sort of way, we will be able to engage with it better. Until that point, wherever there is coercion, the law will intervene and the law will be called upon to intervene.
So you've raised an interesting point here, because coercion in itself, fine, if you look at it from a colonial point of view, then will be interpreted by the courts. But then coercion is also relative. For me, what may be coercion may not be for you.
That would have to be then decided on a case-to-case basis. What I'm trying to explain is it's very difficult to bring about a broad-based framework to this. There are some foundational principles, and the idea of coercion is a foundational principle, but then it'll have to be case-to-case basis.
Right.
Like you may say, this is coercion for me, and then it'll have to be adjudicated whether this truly can be considered coercion or not. Right? It's the same thing, a bit like the same conversation we always have about free speech.
Yes.
As you know, free speech is not 100% free. It depends. It depends on the context. It depends on what was said. It depends on who it was said to. It depends on where it was said. All of this matters. So context will matter.
Free speech also has become such an important conversation today, because everything now, people are getting sensitive. Smallest of things to largest of things.
Yeah.
So are you a free speech absolutist yourself? Or do
No
you
one
call
can be a
yourself
free speech absolutist. This is a myth. Anybody who says he or she or they are free speech absolutists, they're lying. There is no such thing. No one can be a free speech absolutist. What is a free speech absolutist? If tomorrow somebody comes and in the most vile manner abuses your parents, are you going to accept it as free speech? You won't. There is no such thing as, you see, it all depends on the context. We never think about the context in comparison to us, right?
Yes, yes.
We always think of the context in a broad public sort of way.
Yes.
But the moment we make it personal, you'll realize that no one accepts free speech as an absolutist concept. We all believe in contextual free speech. I should retain the ability to criticize, for instance, institutions that have a direct bearing upon my life, right? And no one can come and tell me in a democratic system that I cannot criticize the institution. They have a direct bearing upon my life as a citizen, right? However, there is no such thing as free speech absolutism. It cannot be. There is a cultural context, there is a civic context, there's a social context, and indeed there is a personal context. And we have to keep all of this in mind when we talk about free speech. But I want to make the point that, again, this context of free speech absolutism, right? Somebody said something which enough number of people, I'm not saying the whole of India, enough number of people felt incensed about for it to have certain social repercussions. Now, were the repercussions too much? Could the person have been reprimanded in a different way? This we can talk about this till the cows come home, so to speak. This will always be, please remember, like all societies, India is also simultaneously many things at one time. It is also a highly modernized, quote unquote, progressive society, but is also a highly traditional society. It is also a highly conservative society. We are all things all at once.
Yeah.
And therefore, it is wise to keep all of that in context. If there are people who are deeply offended by it, they have the right. Look, any of us, including you and me, people who engage with the public medium must have the responsibility to realize that when I'm putting something out in public, I must take responsibility for it. I cannot put something out in public and say, oh, but why are people feeling angry? They may be justified, they may not be justified. But I should also be, and maybe they're not justified also. may or may not, right? But I should also be responsible enough to think that this is a public medium, right? Do you put down, or do I put down any conversation, private conversations in my family on Twitter? No. But if I put it on Twitter, then people have the right to respond.
Yeah.
I have chosen to put it on. If I put onto Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and a deep-seated private quarrel in my family, I'm just giving an example, right? Onto that social medium, do I not have the responsibility that I am putting that information out? And by putting that information out in public, then you cannot say people are abusing me in the comments, but you have chosen to make it public.
Yes. So they will respond the way they want to.
They will respond. How can you control everybody's response? You have chosen to put this information. You chose to say this in a public platform which you knew was going to be seen by tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
If you did not have the maturity or the responsibility to know what you're saying, then either, I'm sorry to say, either you're very, very, very stupid or you're malicious. We have to agree on one thing. It can't be neither. You cannot be an innocent actor. You're not an innocent actor. Either you're very stupid or you're very malicious. Either way, then you face the consequences.
Right.
We all are responsible adults. As the person who say these things, we're also responsible adults. And we know, as people who engage with the public mediums or media, that there has to be a responsibility in dealing with.
And accountability.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You said that India has many things.
Yeah, all at once. Yes.
There is a lot of conversation about Hindu identity
Yes.
now, which is picked up in the recent, say, 10-15 years,
Yeah.
more than otherwise. Is it something to do with the political undercurrents? Is it something to do with finally realizing that now we are going to take the identity by its horns and actually act on it? What is this change
No, I think,
about?
in my opinion, a few things have happened. Number one, I think we have a very wrong notion of secularism in our country. Number one, there is a reason why the founding fathers and the founding mothers chose not to put the word in the constitution. This was all debated.
Secularism, you mean?
Yes, right? Because they knew that Indian society, by its very virtue, was plural. I anyway prefer the word plural. We are a deeply plural, deeply diverse society. By the way, if you look at the large span of Indian history, I'm writing this new book on India as a civilizational state. If you look at the large scope of India's history, you will see that there's a consensus on this pluralism and the fact that Indian civilization fundamentally, philosophically supports this pluralism throughout time, from our foundational texts to the key philosophers, to traveling mendicants and diarists who came from other parts of the world to us. They are all in many, many ways converging on this idea that we are fundamentally plural and that pluralism is philosophically and socially embedded in the very fabric of India.
Right.
However, the way secularism was conversed upon in India in maybe the last 30 years or so, it had become in many cases a joke. I'll give you one example. About 10 years ago or 15 years ago, there was a relatively well-known journalist who was caught misbehaving with a woman young enough, perhaps even younger than his daughter, in an elevator in Goa. When that case went to court, the defense argued that, because he was a great upholder of secularism, that's why he had been brought to court. We had made it so farcical. We had taken a valuable concept of pluralism, tried to connect it with secularism, which is in a sense, a slightly different concept coming and emanating from a different country where, of course, there had to be a separation between the church and the state and so on and so forth. Without recognizing or without adequately recognizing and acknowledging the thousands of years of lived experience of pluralism that India had, And then with this, the Indian elite, and I blame the Indian elite for this, a small Indian elite had made this secularism idea a farce. It had become a farce. So much so that I'm giving you the most ghastly example, that a old man essentially, could sexually abuse a woman, a girl really, young enough to be his daughter, and then claim that he was a great upholder of secularism and that's why he was being attacked in court. This is a joke. We had taken this valuable idea of pluralism, and I would even say valuable idea of secularism at a level, even though it doesn't exactly map to the Indian experience. And the Indian elite had begun to use it and had used it very weaponized almost the idea of secularism as something to defend the indefensible. You could defend the indefensible using this terminology.
Right.
I think what has happened is, in the last 20 years, and everybody wants to make all of this political. So, people say only in the last 10 years and last 15 years. Actually, the beginning, and a lot of my early work was on liberalization. I think it begins with liberalization. And it's very simple. You will understand why this happens. You look at country after country. Like individuals, nations follow this Maslow's hierarchy. We first have to fulfill our basic needs. If you were hungry today, or if you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, you wouldn't be sitting here doing an interview with me talking about ideas of secularism and justice and so on and so on.
Right.
You would be like, I don't care about secularism and justice. I want to ensure that I'm not hungry in the next 8 hours or 10 hours. My children are not hungry. My family is not hungry. Right? Okay. So we were very poor for a long time. We took a long time to take care of all those basic needs. When liberalization came and the economy began to grow, over the years, a lot of our basic needs began to get mitigated. People got more money, everybody got a little bit of a better lifestyle. We pulled a lot of people out of poverty. And this is a journey. Whenever this happens in a country over a 10-15 year period, people then begin to ask questions of identity. Vivekananda said, you cannot teach a hungry man about God. It's the same thing.
True.
You will only ask deeper social, philosophical questions of identity once your basic needs are met. So as more and more the middle classes felt that the basic needs were met, they began to ask questions of identity. And because we are still overwhelmingly a Hindu country, many of the questions that they asked were related to Hinduism. If we were overwhelmingly a Christian country, many of the questions we would have asked would be related to Christianity. But we are an overwhelmingly Hindu country, so therefore the questions were related to Hinduism. Actually, what people were asking is the following, in my opinion. They were asking questions about, who am I? Where do I really come from? Is there something really valuable about me and my culture? Or is everything valuable only to be found somewhere else? Right? What about my culture? What about my food? What about my music, my aesthetics, my whatever, like each of the cultural attributes that India has, people are asking, what is valuable about us? Yeah. I'll give you an example, and I'm wearing Indian clothes, including a dhoti today in this conversation. So I will tell you, I wear Indian clothes, including a dhoti, all the time in summer, right? A lot of people ask me, how nice that you wear this. I wear it for a fundamental reason. I believe, and this connects directly to the ideas I'm talking about, I believe what we have done in this country is that we have converted this idea of Indian clothing into costume.
Right.
Especially for men. When do men wear Indian clothes? If there is Diwali. If there is something else, a wedding in the
Nowadays,
family.
even not on festivals or weddings also.
Exactly. But we've never thought about it. Because we've just mindlessly copy-pasted and continued something. Therefore, I think what's happening in India at the moment has much less to do with Hinduism or not Hinduism. It is a cultural churn. And that cultural churn means more and more people are asking, okay, I know that these are good things in different countries. Okay, tell me what is good about my culture. Because for a long time, people were told in India, everything about our culture is bad. We are superstitious, we have no civic sense, we are corrupt, all kinds of things. All philosophical ideas that we have are, not very good, and so on and so forth. But we are coming to a point, and we've come to a point, I feel, where many, many more people are asking, no, if we have a 5,000 year history and civilization, it's not possible that all of this has to be junked and we have to mindlessly follow the West, right? There surely are many things that are good in our country. And as Indians have traveled, I'll give you a very popular culture example. As many Indians have traveled around the world, they've realized, oh, I'm paying $5 for, this turmeric latte. But if my grandmother or my mother told me in my house in India that, have some haldi with your doodh, we would say, this is all rubbish. You don't know what this is.
Yeah.
This is all superstition. You believe all this rubbish.
True.
Think about it. We have always had a long tradition of regimented fast in our country. But if I were to tell you that I do fasting on certain day because of certain religious beliefs, someone will come and tell me, oh, this is all superstition or backdated, whatever. But when the Silicon Valley bros tell you that we are doing intermittent fasting for so many hours because it triggers autophagy inside me and the dead cells burn, then we are like, oh my God, let's pay for this. So this couldn't have continued forever.
Yeah.
Indians woke up to this and say, this is ridiculous. When the same idea is packaged and sold to us, then we think it's wonderful. But when it comes out from our own culture, we deny it and denigrate it. That's a really ridiculous thing to do. We gained confidence. See, there's this wonderful book that has just come out called The African History of Africa.
Okay.
By this wonderful scholar. I believe the Indian history of India is yet to be written. A lot of the history that Indians understand even today is told and seen through the lenses of Westerners, primarily.
The elites also.
By the elites using Western frameworks.
Why do you think that happens? Is it because they're educated abroad?
Yeah,
what is
because
it like?
they're culturally conditioned to looking at their own. See, India never built, we're talking about journalism, right, earlier. India never built a really, and this was great, Naipaul's great insight, that India always looked at itself through the lenses of others. It never built a critical system of looking at itself through its own eyes. Not that we don't have the systems, but because of the long period of invasions, colonialism, all kinds of things, we banished that entire system. We have been given this very strange idea that we are only, underline the word only pacifist and peaceful. Where is this idea coming from? Well, Gandhiji was very non-violent, and then there was this non-violent revolution. All of this is true. But we did not get independence because of only non-violence. No serious historian will tell you that. Because if you say that, you are completely denigrating and destroying and wiping out years of work that the revolutionaries did. Right? Think about all these amazing young men who went to the gallows, young men and women, in fact, who went to the gallows, fighting for India's freedom. Think about, I'm Bengali. Do you know the largest contingent of people who were imprisoned in Kalapani, right? Including people like Trilokyanath and others, some people spent 30 years and so on and so forth. The largest contingent in Kalapani, in the Andaman Cellular Jail, were Bengalis, followed by Punjabis. So all these people who gave their lives and, fought the empire and fought this bitter war against the empire. What about the naval mutiny, which finally convinced the British that if they cannot hold even the navy, then they cannot hold India. And they, preponed, as we say in India, their exit and exited early. They were going to exit a little later. They preponed and exited in 1947 in August. So that entire history we have wiped out by giving us this idea that, we were only pacifist. But our history doesn't bear this out. Our history shows that we were this dynamic civilization which could defend itself, which had great military strength, great wealth, which was able to spread its culture around Southeast Asia and so on and so forth. Look at the history of the Cholas, right? Our entire maritime history, we have no maritime consciousness. We are a maritime country with a massive coastline and a history of maritime work, right? Including, of course, this great trade between India, the Mediterranean, and the West. Pliny the Elder the Roman historian complaining that the coffers of Rome are being emptied. Why are they being emptied? Because people are buying too many things from India, from Indies. And why is that? Because India is one of the great manufacturing hubs of the world. All of this history, this trade, this maritime history, all of this great, history of military strength, the great history of wealth, all of this we have wiped out. We are now, our elite wanted us to believe, and all of this is coming back, our elite wanted us to believe only two things. There was no India before 1947, which is absolutely wrong. There was no republic. The nation state came into being in 1947. But there was a nation.
Yes.
And anybody in social sciences would explain to you that the nation concept and the nation state concept are two different things. A nation is fundamentally a notion, so to speak. It is a collective belief of people. It's a rashtra, as we often say. And that nation existed for a long, long time. The nation state with a written constitution and a republic, framework came into being after 1947. So this is the big debate in India. What you are thinking of as a change in terms of, people's consciousness, maybe only towards Hinduism, I would argue actually what is happening is the victory of the people who believe that India has been a nation for a long time against the small elite that wanted to convince us, which by the way, this all comes from the British, that there was no India. The first time this was said was by a colonial administrator. There is no India until the British brought it together. How did they bring it together? Through railways. All of this was fed into our system. So I think all of us are now breaking away from the shackles of these colonial beliefs to move to a point where we are, we talk about justice. We have such an elaborate concept and ideas of justice in our philosophy. And, we can discuss that at length at some other time. But I'm just saying we are breaking away fundamentally. And it will not happen in one day. It's a long process. But that process has begun. What you're alluding to is this process. It is the victory of the people who believe that there was for a very long time an Indian, a Bharatiya nation against the small elite, which has always believed that until the British, there was no India. And then, of course, in fact, India only begins in 1947. This is what's going on, in my opinion, in our country.
And when we're looking at the judiciary also, for that matter,
Yes.
a lot of times now we see, not that it wasn't happening in the past, now it's happening at a larger scale.
Yeah.
Judges are quoting the Vedas, they are quoting the Upanishads in their
Yeah.
judgments. Justice Swaminathan is one such judge, and he's being accused of bias. Well, that's a different conversation altogether. Recently, there was news that there was a judge who attended an RSS event. Of course, it's a political organization. It's an organization which is social in nature. It has a large-scale following, etc. So, she attended an event, and one of the people who are appearing in that case, that is Arvind Kejriwal, has asked for her recusal. So, these ideologies that people carry, when they seep into the judiciary, do you think it's now more open now? It used to be open in the past also, and people didn't see it because of social media, whatever it may be. Do you think it's a good thing that now people are carrying these identities with themselves in their professional lives also?
I think there are two things. By the way, just as an aside, I find it ironic that Arvind Kejriwal, of all people, is objecting to anybody being associated with any organization, considering his own background and past, which many of us are aware of. But anyway, be that as it may, my point is simple. You may have any beliefs in your head. You may say, I believe God is in this plant.
Okay.
And every Sunday I hang out with 20 people who also believe God is in this plant. Right? I cannot change what is in your head. That's your belief. But if I can demonstrate that you are bringing that belief into work of a public nature that is having adverse impact in the work that you do, then that is a matter of concern.
Okay.
I don't know whether that has been demonstrated. And as far as people having allegiances and political allegiances in the past, of course they've had political allegiances
Correct.
in the past. Of course, they've had political allegiances in the past. In fact, the legal profession is one of the most political professions, not only in our country, in every country, but especially in our country.
Yes.
It is highly embedded and interwoven with politics.
Correct.
My only question is again, action rather than belief is the filter that we should use. Is it demonstrated that the person concerned is using these, whatever their belief systems, whatever their connections might be, into the work that they do? And I at least don't know about this, perhaps you do. I'm saying that there are many problems. I think the least of the problems is this idea of who's associated with what.
Yeah. Question that stems from here is a lot of judges now retire and now they step down and they speak about politics more and more. And they have very
and on all sides, by the way.
But I feel like there is more of a pushback against Hindutva political ideologies, Hinduism, not per se, but from a political lens. So, majoritarian point of view.
So, the thing is, again, like all of these are said very easily, but I think these are very complex issues. Number one, what exactly is Hindutva only has never been properly defined. People are still arguing about that. What exactly is majoritarianism in a country as diverse as ours? Again, we can debate this. That could be a whole new debate, right?
Yeah.
At what quantum of population is a majority, quote unquote, to be defined? In what way? We have so many states. In which state? Who's a minority? Who's a majority? How does it work? All of this is very complex. I'm only saying, because we are so consumed by politics in our country, there is no running away from the fact that judges, being part and parcel of the same society that they adjudicate, will have their personal beliefs, their personal philosophies, perhaps even personal political ideologies.
Yeah.
Perhaps some of them will talk about it only once they step down. And I see, judges, who have retired, giving their opinion on various, platforms, which sometimes support governments, sometimes are against certain governments, sometimes are for some leaders, sometimes are against certain leaders. This is a churn. I actually feel that all of this would be resolved much more if we bring in a far more efficient system, especially you introducing technology into our judicial system. With the advent of AI and many other kinds of tools, many mechanisms are coming and will come, which will, in a sense, perhaps be able to, in some senses, curtail what we call human bias. But please remember, having said that, as long as there is a judiciary in any country, it will be populated most likely by human beings.
Correct.
And human beings will come with human biases. No one can be entirely.
No, Dr. Sengupta, I asked this question because the pushback is more and larger in a larger way on social media and generally amongst peers or whatever you may want to call it, by people when the judges are, from a specific point of view, say the Hindu point of view or Hindutva point of view, for example.
Which only tells us one thing, that among a certain kind of elite in our country, they still have a particular viewpoint, and then they feel that only one side doing something is more wrong than the other side
doing something. Exactly. And whenever it's a leftist judge, so as to speak, it's hush-hush, nobody wants to talk about it. Or even the people who are not on the same ideology as him, they also don't talk about it. That's what surprises me, because talk about it, then openly, if both sides are doing it.
So this is the problem, right? I mean, look, this is basically elite capture of social ideology. What happens essentially is that the elite usually come from very similar backgrounds. They've come to same schools, same colleges. They've been indoctrinated in a particular way. Therefore, when they put forward their perspective on anything, they indulge in what we call groupthink.
Okay.
They all want to agree with one another. Because, if you are my peer and I'm meeting you and I seek social validation from you, I would want to agree with you. Because how else will I get that social validation?
Yeah.
It takes the formation of what I would call a counter elite to balance out these things, and it's happening, I think, in India. I mean, I think we are now far more diverse than perhaps when I was, in college and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Certainly, social media has allowed the profusion of many more points of views than just one point of view. I mean, when I was a young journalist, one of the problems was that even in media, there was total groupthink. You had to look at every issue
From one lens. Yeah.
This was a big problem, right? But today media has also become more diverse, right? I think media has also genuinely become, people have become more diverse. There are many more points of views. There is a far greater dialogue. It can be an acrimonious dialogue also, but a dialogue in our country. In India, the elite capture of ideology and social institutions was so high that they made anything canonical. They made everything, canonical. So, which means you can only say Nehru is this. Why? Because 5 other godfathers of Indian history have told you only can say this.
Yeah.
Or you can say only this about Savarkar. Why? Because again, some godfathers of history have told you. If you don't say this, they will not endorse your work. Then they will try to block you. They will try to stop your publication. This racket, I'm sorry to use the word, but this racket went on in India for a very long time. It's a racket. It's a scam.
Yes.
It's a great scam, a social scam in India. Complete elite capture, complete groupthink, and then complete use of brutal veto power to stop any other voices from emerging.
So quickly going to one.
I mean, the crowd may have moved away from Khan Market. They may be not sitting in Khan Market anymore, but the problem exists.
Yeah, now it's an amalgamation Khan Market for sure of various people. So yes, definitely not there anymore.
Yeah.
Which is great. Another
Khan
quick.
Market is also too crowded now, I feel.
It is because people have finally discovered that we can also go there.
This is true. And see, this is the problem. Khan Market has got democratized. So a lot of people don't go to Khan Market anymore.
Yeah, true.
Such is life.
So now, what is the place where they actually go?
Who knows? I am largely at home, so who knows?
Another quick question.
Yes,
I want to go back to the Sabarimala issue quickly.
Yes.
Do you think it should have reached the courts at all?
No.
No?
No.
And why is that?
This is a matter of long-standing cultural, civilizational belief held by devotees. Please understand, fundamentally, a temple or a sacred place is built on the conviction, beliefs, piety, and tradition of that community. That community should decide what happens there. You know how it happened, right? This whole thing, from what I understand, somebody in Delhi again wrote this completely bizarre article which got published with no ground understanding. I don't think the person has ever went to Sabarimala also. But they wrote an article because, of course, you can write an article, and especially if it has to do with Hinduism, of course, you can quickly
and it gets picked up very quickly.
Of course, absolutely. 2 other people, again with zero understanding of what the ground level situation, the lived experience, hundreds of years of lived experience, tradition, all of that went out of the window. They filed a case. The moment this case happened, everybody got onto it because everybody had agenda. It should have never happened. See, look at what the farce that's going on. Today, the CPM, which took such great stance saying, no, we are for this and that and gender and whatever. Today saying, we support the Hindu groups and we support the community and we support tradition. Why? Because they want votes. So this is entirely a farce, and it's a disgusting farce. It's a farce played on the debris and destroying the real lived experience and piety of ordinary worshippers, ordinary believers who have nothing, who have no political power, no strength, no economic power apart from their devout faith. And to do this because of this kind of heinous colonized mind and politics, in my opinion, is truly disgusting. And I absolutely, completely condemn it. I have condemned it from day one. I condemn it today. It is absolutely wrong.
I ask because this perspective of feminism also comes in. And a lot of people try to justify it or not justify it from that lens, where you see the gender aspect and they say that, oh, why are women being sidelined here? And because they are being sidelined, the court should be able to decide. So that is the main question, mainly, in
And
elite circles.
this question is, they have no understanding. They do not understand that issues as complex as this are not it's not a placard issue. Everything has become an Instagram and a placard issue. No. At the end of the day, actually, if only they understood the deep richness of feminism in India and the whole tradition that we have followed, and years of so much philosophical work that has happened. I am a feminist. I have always believed I'm a feminist. All my actions throughout my life would show that I'm a feminist. But you cannot be single point or single agenda oriented in issues like this. This has many things involved in it. It has culture, it has lived experience, it has a whole range of issues that come together. By the way, interestingly, the same people, and I have to say this, the same people who bring in feminism in making the argument for Sabarimala, their argument for Sabarimala, go and say that different kinds of attire which cover the entire faces and bodies of women in a different tradition are acceptable because it is lived experience, because it's private choice.
Right.
But if you're looking at lived experience there, how are you not looking at lived experience here? And one can go into a lot of examples.
Correct.
But I just feel it's very, it reeks of elite hypocrisy. The elite hypocrisy in this is staggering. You have no idea of the place, of the tradition, of there are many. I mean, this will get into too much of a theological conversation, but there are many temples. I mean, temples in India have a particular role, and each temple has a particular thing associated with it. That thing, what I'm calling thing, is basically a philosophical idea. It is the cultural lived experience of many people over many years. Over generations. There is a lot of things to unpack in this. To go with this one point agenda to look at issues like this is, I mean, I would ignore it as juvenile if it wasn't so toxic and so problematic at various levels. This is exactly the same problem we see in every part of the world. Some parts of the world are easily propelled up into global news. Some other parts of the world, if something happens there, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right? The same people who will argue vehemently about Sabarimala will not say a single word about what happened in Sandesh Khali, for instance, and the brutal gang rape of women and many other terrible, heinous things that happened there, or the R.G. Kaur case, for instance, in Calcutta. Do you know what has happened in that case? I mean, and have any of our great elite circles do they ever talk about it? I'll send you links. I mean, you can just search it. It's been widely reported. In the Sandesh Khali case, one of the main accused, one of the main witnesses against the main accused, who after a lot of political coercion would not give in and would not bend, was going in a vehicle to give their deposition to the court with their son and some other people. In an accident, a truck came and hit the car, killing people in that car, thus preventing this entire process from continuing. And it was declared an accident. This is the brutal reality of what goes on in our country. And that, have you ever heard of this incident in all the elite circles?
I haven't.
Considering Sandesh Khali at least had become national news.
National news, yes.
But has anybody followed up and said, oh my God, look what is happening here? No.
Yes.
No.
Food for thought for sure, yes.
This is the way a small, embittered elite pushes their propaganda and agenda upon all of us. Right? I'm not saying there are not malactors on all sides of the political spectrum. There are malactors on all sides of the political spectrum, absolutely. But the elite capture still swings towards one direction. That's my point.
Yes. On that note, I want to end by asking you whether you see the constitutional jurisprudence not from a specific lens only, but from a generic, holistic way, that lens, whether it will evolve with the civilizational thought process that belongs to India.
It is already evolving, right? Allow me to mention this. It's already evolving. And I think our founding fathers and mothers were very enlightened in many ways. By the way, I'm part of an institution. The university that I'm part of has built India's first constitution museum.
Yes, I've seen it.
You've
Yes,
seen it? How
yes,
wonderful.
Yes.
Did you like it?
It was wonderful.
It was, I mean, it was a beautiful thing. I also was, mesmerized when I first saw it. And I see the Constitution Museum all the time when I go to the General Global University where I teach. I am a firm believer that our Constitution is a living document. It is embracing and evolving with our society. But the foundations that our founding mothers and fathers put have great value. They were very enlightened, wise people. They put frameworks in place which allows us to be, people keep saying, oh, it's such a long constitution. It's long because we're a very large country. Please remember, there were a lot of things to be taken care of, right? And there was great participation by all kinds of people during that time in this process. I think it's a rich living document, and if you truly understand the spirit of the Indian Constitution, you realize that it's not only deeply civilizational, but it is also deeply evolving. It is a kinetic idea. The frameworks, I'm not saying every word is constantly changing, but I'm saying the frameworks allow a lot of kinetic, energy to happen between them. It's a living document. So I have great faith in the people of my country and in the constitutional process that it evolves consistently, and keeping in mind the fundamental bedrock of our civilization. Because without that civilization, we are truly nothing. And without the constitution, we obviously cannot have this great republic. So both are absolutely intertwined and important. And I'm a firm believer that it is this cohesion between the two that will take us forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that great conversation.
Thank you.
Lots of food for thought.
Thank you.
So thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you very
Sengupta.
much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.